Good morning, everybody. Our readings today are found in Genesis chapter 28, verses 10 to 22. Jacob's dream at Bethel. Jacob left at Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are laying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you, and you will watch over this land, wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, through the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. The words of God for the people of God.
Thank you so much, Esther. Good morning, everyone. God bless you. We're continuing in our theme for this season, From Strength to Strength. The title of today's message is Strength on the Move, Jacob's Journey. Perhaps the most common metaphor for life is this one. Life is like traveling on a road. Sometimes we get to be drivers, but other times we're just passengers. There's some stops along the way, and sometimes we take the road less traveled, but we're always in motion. If we stop for too long, that's usually not good because oftentimes there are things we need to outrun. For example, we work because we need to outpace indebtedness. We definitely want to have a destination. We don't want to just be hamsters running in a wheel, putting in all this effort and going nowhere. The toughest challenge to deal with is when you're on an unknown road, one that is not of your choosing, and you have no idea where it's going. What do you do? Today's passage is about Jacob, who found himself in that exact situation. Now, Jacob was a man of destiny. He was the younger of fraternal twin brothers. In spite of that, God foretold before he was even born that the blessing of his grandfather Abraham would go through his line, not that of his older brother, and that the nation founded by his descendants, the Israelites, would be greater than that founded by his brothers, the Edomites. Tradition at that time held that the older son would inherit as his birthright a double portion of the family's wealth and would also become the new patriarch and leader of the family. Esau was the firstborn, but Jacob sought to take the birthright from his brother through subterfuge. One day, Esau was returning home from a long hunt, starving and exhausted. Jacob was waiting for him with a big pot of stew. He asked Jacob for some of it, and Jacob told him, "No, you can't have any of this stew until you swear your birthright over to me." And Esau actually did that. We can rightly condemn Esau for lacking sense. He threw away the most important thing in his life for a meal. He must have been really, really hungry. But you also have to question Jacob's wisdom in scheming against his own brother, a man who is just as physically formidable as himself and of a much fiercer character. Sometime after that, Jacob and his mother Rebekah maneuvered to take his father Isaac's prophetic blessing from Esau also. Isaac had always favored Esau because he was a skilled hunter and was always bringing back tasty game for him to eat. Isaac told Esau to go out, bag another kill, prepare a nice meal, and then receive his blessing. But Rebekah favored Jacob. As soon as Esau went out, she took 2 goats from the flock and made a tasty dish for Jacob to bring to Isaac. Isaac was old and completely blind at that time because Esau was a hairy man and Jacob wasn't. Rebekah had Jacob put goatskins on his forearms and neck and dressed Jacob in his brother's clothes so Isaac would think he was Esau. And it worked. Isaac embraced the disguised Jacob who felt like Esau and smelled like Esau, and he gave Jacob the blessing. That was the last straw for Esau. Jacob, with his trickery and deceit, had taken from him everything that was his by right, his birthright and his blessing, and had completely spoiled the father-son moment that was meant for him. So Esau decided that as soon as Isaac finally died, he would kill his brother. So Jacob had to flee to Haran in the country of Aram to live with his uncle Laban. What a stunning reversal of fortune. In a few short days, Jacob went from being the presumed head of his family to becoming an exile, forced to leave his family and his land. Haran was over 450 airline miles away from Beersheba, where Jacob set out. He was completely alone. No family, no friends, no attendants. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. There was a whole lot of dangers in those 450 miles. He could have stayed at home, but then he would have ended up either dead or with his twin brother's blood on his hands. Jacob might well have been thinking, how did I screw this up so badly? But here in our passage, we see that in that most perilous and uncertain and hopeless time of his life, God showed up. And that changed everything. I want to leave you with 2 takeaways. And the first is, God is with you. God is with you. I love verse 15 of today's passage because it spells it out as about as plainly and unambiguously as we can ask. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. God is with you, even in the darkest moments of your life, especially in the darkest moments of your life. God is with you. Even when you're all alone, when you've lost everything, God is with you, and He will not leave you. No matter what you're up against, you can move forward in strength. Nothing life can ever throw at you can compare to the author of life, the Lord of heaven who commands angels by the myriad. God is with you. The second takeaway is that God has a greater plan for your life. Jacob might have thought this retreat to Aram put him a long way away from the land of Canaan promised to his father and his grandfather. And indeed, he would be there 20 years before God called him back home and he reconciled with his brother Esau. God had bigger plans and a higher purpose for him. God revealed in a dream that far from being a retreat, far from losing his way, God was actually leading him down on the path of his destiny and shaping him into the man that he needed to be. Jacob was the original hustler. He thought to make it in life doing things his way. But by doing things his way, he almost lost everything. He got to experience firsthand the injustice of what he did to his brother Esau when God put him in the hands of his scheming and deceitful uncle Laban, who tricked him into marrying both of his daughters rather than just the one who was promised to him, and getting 14 years of free labor in the process. After that, when the time came to pay Jacob some real wages for his work, Laban kept trying to pay out the least amount possible, changing their agreement 10 times over the next 6 years. All this, no doubt, resolved Jacob to change his ways and become a man of integrity. Jacob might initially have thought his scheming and scamming to get his brother's inheritance would have him set for life. 20 years of hard work for his uncle taught him there are no shortcuts in life. More than anything else, Jacob had to stop imagining that he could dictate the course of his life. He had to lose everything to learn that God's timing is perfect. God's plans are perfect. And all he ever needed to do was put his full trust in God. No matter where this life takes us, we have to understand that we are on a greater journey. There's a promised land waiting for us in heaven. We go to dwell in our Father's house, a mansion that has many rooms, more than enough for those who believe. God is watching over us on this journey, and He will give us strength if we trust in Him. Strength to live out His plan for our lives. There's a process, and we just need to trust it. To know that even when the trials come, they're not throwing us off our process. They're part of our process. God uses trials. We go from strength to strength because every time we have trials in our life and come out the other side, and we will always come out the other side, we come out more resilient, more discerning, and more loving. I want to conclude by saying that we are the people of blessing. In the last verse of our passage, Jacob promises to give God 1/10 of all that God would give him. This is the second time in the Bible that tithing is mentioned. I know the NIV text reads, "If God will do this, then I will do that." But what should be understood here is that Jacob made a vow to God, not a deal. God had already revealed to Jacob a prosperous future for him and his descendants. But Jacob said to God, "If you just give me food and clothing and see me safely to where I'm going, that's all I need." He trusted in God's provision before he'd even received it. And the tithe was his thanksgiving. When God spoke to Jacob in his dream, he told Jacob the same thing that he told his grandfather Abraham, that the whole world would be blessed through him and his offspring. Jacob understood that it wasn't just about him and his family. Though he would not get to see Jesus, who was the ultimate fulfillment of that prophecy, he would see a foreshadowing when he had to sacrifice his favorite son Joseph, who God would use to bring salvation to both Jacob's family and the entire nation of Egypt. In this day and age, we are the people of blessing. Like Jacob, we give because we are covenant people who are blessed by God with provision for today and the promise of eternity for tomorrow. Our offerings are in gratitude for these blessings. Like Jacob, we are called to be a blessing to the world, and we give because that is how we love our neighbors. To put it more succinctly, we give because we are blessed to be a blessing. Now, one bit of terminology I've been hearing Christians use over the years that I'm really not that crazy about is the adjective radical. Radical hospitality, radical giving. Radical implies that there's some set standard out there, and we Christians should pat ourselves on the back. We go beyond it. Remember the parable of the Good Samaritan? Jesus used it to answer the question, who is my neighbor? But in the process, he also answered the question, what does it actually mean to love our neighbor? Let me put it to you this way. According to census records, in 2024, the median household income in the town of Leonia, New Jersey, was $116,429. Divide that by 261 working days, and you get $446.09. That is a denarius in today's money. The Good Samaritan in the parable picked up the beaten-up Jew, a man who hated and despised him, and he gave him a ride to an inn, which was the closest thing to a hospital in those days, forked out almost $900 to cover his care, and said, if this doesn't cover it, I will get you the rest. Loving our neighbors does not mean not hating them. It does not mean having kindly thoughts toward them. Love is sacrifice. This is not radical. This is the standard God wants us to live by. After all, do you think God has a special fascination for the number 10? God doesn't need our 10%. It's not like he's got bills to pay. God doesn't want our 10%. God wants our everything. Does that sound radical? Well, if it does, then just remember that God isn't asking us for more than He has already given us. God already gave us everything. He sent His Son Jesus to die on a cross so we could be saved from sin and death and live eternally with Him. At the end of the day, the world doesn't need our 10% either. The world needs God. But it is through our giving, our time, talents, and treasure that people can see our love. And if they can see our love, then they can come to know God's love. As we journey through this life, trust in the strength that God gives us. Strength to not only get to where we're going, past all the hazards and obstacles of this life, but strength to lift up our fellow travelers as well. People of God, we are blessed to be a blessing.